The title of our PD today is Beyond Elbow Bumps, and I'll explain sort of what we mean by that in a minute here. I just posted, for those of you who just joined us, a couple of links in the chat. And without any further ado, just want to get started. Something I like to do when I'm running a PD is to acknowledge where I am. And I'm coming at you from the PCC, if you can tell here. And it sits in Palmdale in the Antelope Valley, where we pursue life, work, and education on the traditional lands of people I've listed here on the screen. And as is tradition and customary when doing a land acknowledgement, I want to give you a resource. And if you go to Native-Land.ca, it's a really cool website put together in Canada, where you can type in your location and you get information on the original inhabitants as best as we know. So great way to keep memories alive. And I want to acknowledge and honor these original inhabitants of our region, past, present, and emerging. So, all right. Also want to make a quick acknowledgement about space and time and where we are in this. And so the title of the PD is Beyond Elbow Bumps, Practices to Keep from Distance Learning, kind of making fun of the, that like silly greeting, it's kind of fun, to not spread germs. You bump elbows rather than shake hands and hug and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm kind of poking fun of that, but I want to assure you I'm not taking the pandemic lightly in any way, shape, or form. And so just wanted to acknowledge that. And, like many of you, I know several people who caught COVID, 3 of whom died from COVID. Another person I know took their life because of the pressures of isolation during quarantine. Another one gave in to substance abuse for the same reason. And so I want to assure you, I'm not taking this lightly, even though, kind of acknowledging this silly greeting. But despite the tragedies of the past couple of years, I think there's a lot we can learn from our time in there. And so our objective is just that. The goal today is to explore some practices and ideas that were effectively used during distance learning during the pandemic teaching. The reason is to maximize the effective practices of the past while leveraging the lessons learned during pandemic teaching, as you can see on the screen there. And basically, our success criteria today is if you find something you can use now, great. We'll call this a success. And I like to think of these series of PDs I've done on this as like buffets, right? When you go to a buffet, you probably shouldn't eat everything, right? But you can if you want. So as I present a couple of strategies and tools, and you might like them, well, great. If you don't, it's not for you, pass it along, move on to the next thing. But hopefully by the end of today, you'll leave with a plate full of goodies, all right? So that's the goal for today, that you have a plate of goodies, all right? So let's start with just how are you feeling? In the chat, tell me, here's 20 options. Pick one of those and type in the number. How are you feeling today? I'm a solid 19 right now. I started the day at a 1 though, maybe a 2. Where are you? Go ahead in the chat, type in a number, telling me how you're feeling right now. Oh no, not a 2. 18, all right. Nice. All right, yeah. Okay. Great. So this slide came from a series of slides. So Miss Pace on Twitter put these together. There's like 50 of them that you can use with, in your own class. So in the notes and also in the presentation, in the speaker notes is a link where you can go and find this. And The themes range from stuff like The Office to Avatar to Harry Potter and all kinds of pop culture things. So there's that. All right. So welcome those of you who are just joining us. Make sure you say hello in the chat so we get an extra evidence that you got here. All right. Feeling like a 6. All right. Thanks. So this is kind of a part 3 of a series we did, and this is kind of like where we came from. In about January, we had done an entire semester of distance learning exclusively, right? And so we went back and looked at things that work. We did a PD on that. Then with literally days until we had some in-person students in this like hybrid, really it was a simultaneous kind of learning thing we did. We ran another PD with hopefully some ideas to help you out with that. And now this is sort of the capstone to it. So with all of that and other things, what worked? And so let's take a look at this. And I kind of rounded up to 6 or 5 different categories, and that's what we're going to look at. The first one we're going to look at is rebuilding agency, both for educators and for students. And this is going to be so important because we're rebuilding. There's a lot of brokenness that happened, in us personally, physically, mentally, spiritually, educationally, right? And so there's a lot of rebuilding that sort of has to happen, right? And so let's start there, all right? So I got this quote, and it really spoke to me. Essentially, we talk about burnout a lot. Burnout is used, especially in our profession, right? But here's the kind of the misconception of burnout. Sometimes we associate burnout with just amount of time spent on something, right? But we could spend hours upon hours on something we really enjoy, right? And it doesn't necessarily hurt us. But real burnout happens when we spend hours and hours on something that we might even enjoy, but never see the fruit of. And now I think that's what was prevalent through the pandemic teaching, right? And so I wanted to start off with this. Let's a quick 2-minute reflection, okay? So I'm going to throw you into breakout rooms for this quick reflection activity, and I'm going to pull you right back. So make it real quick. But here's 2 questions. What were some new unexpected learning opportunities that you experienced during the pandemic? So maybe you took up cooking or sewing, right? I don't know. Like, what's a new learning that you did during the pandemic? And then, if you get to the second question, what are some unexpected learning opportunities that students have had outside of the curriculum? So not in your math class, but not in your English class, but what were some of the things that they ended up learning as a result? So I am going to, all right, thank you. Can we get maybe 1 or 2 people to share what's something that was a new learning opportunity that either you experienced or that you noticed your students had? Carol said you ran out of time. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was really quick. Sorry.
I'll share. The new learning experience I felt like was technology. Like I started incorporating all of these different tools in my classroom that I never really had the time to use before or didn't have the money to buy them, but suddenly we had them. And so I was able to use, I was using Cami and I was using Screencastify and I was using like Nearpod and I was using all of these things that I always wanted to use, but we didn't always have them available for free to us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for sharing, Shannon. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, I saw somebody else. Was it somebody on a phone, I think, so I don't see your name.
Yeah,
Did you have something to share?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we could. Now we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. It's just for some reason I clicked the wrong button and I came to the main meeting. I don't know how to go back.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. So yeah, for me, it was baking. I started baking and technology, ed tech, like really what a flood of that also. And we'll talk about how we can leverage that now in a little bit. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about here is rebuilding student agency. And I have a Edutopia article linked here, and for the sake of time, I won't go into it, but you can click on that and have some good resources there. So let's start with this. Lisa Johnson wrote a book called Creatively Productive. And to promote her book, she shared these, and these are free on her website, but it's hard to get to. So I just made a copy and shared them with you here, but they're free. I'm not stealing from her. And she has this very cool mood tracker on a Google sheet. And oh, by the way, I'm going to give you some time in the middle to explore some of these things. So if you're like having trouble going back and forth from the slides, you'll have some time to do some playing with these. But the idea here is that you can assign these to students or share them to students, and they can keep track of themselves, like how they're feeling in the morning and how they're feeling in the evening, and then jot down a daily gratitude moment, right? So there's that one, and then there's also a mood and health tracker, something for reflecting, and you can play with those and see how you might use those. One idea on using these is sharing them out to students and not necessarily even collecting them, but it's a good way to have students sort of self-monitor themselves, right? And this has like Avid written all over it too. Like you could do this at the beginning of binder checks or something like that, right? Or every Wednesday, or at the beginning of every day, or at the end of each period, maybe a cool homeroom activity for students. And then there's this other one right here. So this is created by someone else, but it's a PDF version. So students can jot down a color code, and then by day and over the period of a month, sort of track their mood, track whether or not they've covered a good habit they're trying to establish, or a bad habit they're trying to get rid of. And again, it's something you might not necessarily collect. It could be something that students can use to start class. All right. So those are there for you to explore, and I'll give you some time to explore those in a little bit. The folks at UC San Francisco, actually students developed this website called GritX, and they designed it, I think it was like a year ago, to help fellow students handle the pressures of the pandemic year. And now I think this year they've handed it off to another set of students. So it's run by students, but they've made it public. And so if we take a look at the website, there's an ad, so we'll get rid of the ad. There's a lot of things that are really cool in here, but I'll show you two things. So one is this Grit Expeditions, right? And so you can select how you're feeling. For example, like relationship drama. What? Students don't deal with that, do they? And it breaks it down into actionable things that students can do to deal with these, their feelings. You click there, and it takes you to, some ideas on how to handle that stress. The other cool thing that they have is the self-care toolkit, right? And the idea here is that you create your own toolkit to handle things that you are struggling with, including yoga poses. So you could click here and add to the toolkit, and your toolkit's over here. Add this to toolkit, and then you can save it as a PDF. So you don't have to log in. Students don't even have to disclose any information. It just creates this toolkit for them, and they can print it or save it to their Google Drive, or you can print it for them. All right. So that's GritX, and that's just 2 of the several things that they have on this website. And again, a way to help you help students either track their mood or deal with difficulties, right? This other organization, the Turnaround for Children, I believe it's what it's called, developed this well-being index, and it's a set of 12 questions that you can ask regularly, and you can fill out yourself with your students or have them do it on their own. And you could create it as a Google form if you want. And the idea is to gather data over time to track how you're feeling and how well you are, right? And so there's that, and there's different versions of it, and I've shared that with you, all right? And then, so we talked about students being able to self-monitor, and now let's talk about us getting to know students. And as you know, it's not a one-time event. Like, I gave you the name tent activity, and now I know you all, right? This is an ongoing thing, And so here's a list of, I'm compiling these, it's up to 24, but activities to get to know students, everything from links to a personality test to a bunch of would you rather questions, a design a t-shirt activity, and things like that. So, spreading these out throughout the year instead of just cramming them all for the first 2 weeks and then jumping into content can be very helpful, or using these in conjunction with your content, right? And so there's those resources for you. Speaking of doing things with your content, there's this activity guide here, and I'll click on it. And essentially, it's a guide to creating a SMART goal. So you start with this Khan Academy video explaining what a SMART goal is, and they do a real good job of explaining it. And then each slide has a definition of each aspect of a SMART goal, a poorly written SMART goal example and a good example, and then a box for the students to develop their own SMART goal based on that information. And at the end, they put it together and create the SMART goal. One of the really clever ways I've seen this done, and I'm saying this the day after back to school night, but teachers had their students develop these before back to school night, and then at back to school night, they had these SMART goals recorded on Flipgrid for the parents to go and watch their kid, explain what their goal for that class is. And parents really ate it up. So for the spring back to school night, there you go. That might be a really great activity to have for that parents will eat up, right? So, all right, so that's the SMART goal activity. We put this together when we were going to do our stable cohorts last year. Remember, towards the end of the year, we were going to start bringing back small groups of students, right? And but what were we going to do with them, right? And so I had put this together to help with that, and it will direct you to a Google slide, and it automatically goes to presentation mode. So you click anywhere to get started, and you have these sticky notes with different ideas. And there's the SMART goal activity I just showed you. The district's virtual calming room is available here also. A way to check your grades on PowerSchool. So you can click on that, and it gives you a video that explains how to get onto PowerSchool and check your grades. And then there's a little worksheet that students can use to keep track of their grades and develop a plan, maybe a SMART goal, right? And then this is the coolest thing right here, I think. All right, so if you click on that, it gives you the information for all the counselors in the district and how to set up an appointment with them, as well as virtual office hours. I checked with Justin Pruitt this morning to make sure that it was accurate, and he said, yeah, it is. They updated, actually, you can tell right here. It was updated 4 hours ago, so they keep it up to date. So I don't know if you've ever been in the situation where you're like, oh man, let's get in contact with a counselor for this kid. Well, here's a one-stop shop for you to do that, and for the students to be able to do that as well. Cool. All right. Oh, thanks, Sia. Just saw the chat there. I hope you get something out of this. So there's that. And that takes you in the wrong. Let me show this tab instead. Okay. All right. Next thing is another Edutopia article that I found very helpful. For the sake of time, we won't visit that, but there it is. Our counseling department also put together this website with ready-to-go lessons on around social emotional learning, specifically on growing in leadership skills. So if your school has been doing habitudes, that's what this is. So for each of their metaphors, they created a ready-to-go lesson. So you could have never looked at it ever and click on the iceberg activity, and you could probably just fake your way through it, right? Obviously, you should probably look at it once or twice before, but it's essentially ready to go. You can just present and assign. So great resource put together by our counseling department. All right, and if you haven't noticed, this is like all like, at least this first section is all about social emotional learning, and there was a lot of it. And I don't want to make this an entire thing on just social emotional learning, but it's how important I feel it is. This concept is, right? Like making sure the mental health of our students is that is being taken care of, right? And it kind of makes me think, like, why hasn't this always been at the forefront, right? So here's some more resources to help with that. You can click through those. My favorite here is this All About Me playlist, and I've seen some teachers use this early in the year to collect the favorite songs of students, and then as class starts, they play the songs that students like. Right? So anyway, and a ton of other resources are here from the State Department of Education. All right, so I want to give you a 5 minutes to explore some of these. I'm actually going to make it 2 minutes. So next thing I want to cover is routines and procedures. Moving on to this section of the buffet now, right? Remember going on airplanes? I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go on an airplane in the past couple of years. It's been at least that long for me. But remember what flight attendants do, right? They tell us the safety procedures every time, right, without fail. Every time we get on a plane, they tell us what it is that's expected of us. They tell us how to do it. They show us how to do it. They expect us to do it. So they model, and then we do it, as if we have never clipped a seatbelt before. They show us how to do that. And without 100% compliance, the plane doesn't get off the ground, right? It doesn't move if not everyone is compliant. And so, the video there, you can watch on your own, but it's a stewardess or a flight attendant going through the procedures, but she just makes everything a joke. It's actually really funny, but you can watch that on your own if you're interested. But the document that's on the left there is a set of procedures and a list of ideas and procedures to help with that, with establishing procedures and expectations in your class. And so we'll go over a couple of them here. One really great thing that really helped in the pandemic year, but then before, and I think now also, is this idea of using visuals for procedures and for expectations. So for example, if today the materials you're going to need are a notebook, your textbook, and a highlighter, right? Show a picture of what the desk looks like or what it's supposed to look like. So on your Promethean board, or on your TV or whatever you have, just throw up a quick picture of what it's supposed to look like, right? The great thing too is Chromebooks. This is actually from the Chromebook card at the PCC. We put that on there because people just weren't putting the computers back at all sometimes, and sometimes not in the right way. And these are responsible adults that are doing this. What about the kids, right? And so we took a picture of what it's supposed to look like, and you can say, make the cart look like this. You'll be surprised how students will be very neurotic about making it look exactly like the picture, and like, you should see that little blue symbol or whatever on there. And so there's that. And also this works at home too. Yeah, my wife put that up for me, and it works. Not really, but the folder there, or a link there, it will take you to a folder of several pictures and ideas of how to establish procedures for your class. And Carol can attest to it, as I see in the chat. So thanks, Carol. All right. Speaking of procedures, there's a few others here. One of my favorites is this procedures potpourri activity. I'll click on the original. There's a digital version too, but the idea here is that you can use this in two ways. One would be you, as the teacher, write down exactly what these procedures should look like, right? What your expectations are. And sometimes, not to excuse kids' naughty behavior, but sometimes they don't necessarily know what the right behavior is, so they do the next naughty thing, right? So if you can tell them exactly what is expected, it's easier to say, hey, what should you be doing, if you've communicated it to them, right? And it's easier to say that than stop doing that naughty thing, right? Tell them exactly what they should be doing. So one way to do this is for you as the educator to spell out and visualize what your expectations are. The other way I've seen this done is given to students in groups. And then the groups decide what would be an appropriate way to enter the classroom, what would be an appropriate way to begin the class, and things like that within reason, right? And then they turn those in, and then the teacher develops the procedures with their input. And the idea there is that they've had some say, so they have some buy-in. So I've seen that work pretty well also. And if that sounds familiar, it's like the social contract activity, which we've linked here. Partner in crime, Ben Jefferson, put together this social contract activity. It's sort of like all spelled out for you. It's ready to go. So there's that. And then there's some Jamboards that this teacher on Twitter I follow, Esther Park. So if you're into the teacher Twitter thing, Esther Park, she's awesome. And she created these Jamboard templates. This activity I always found really useful coming back after winter break or after a long time of not being with students, and they may need a reminder of what the procedures are. So I give them the procedures that were established semester one. This might be after Thanksgiving break also, or after spring break, it would work. Or even maybe around this time after, maybe or around the latter end of first quarter, but give the students the behaviors and the procedures, a list of them, and then have them take pictures of what it's supposed to look like and what it's not supposed to look like. The template is a Google slide, and so it's easy to just plop pictures on there. And then there's a cross out symbol there. So it's here's what you're what it's supposed to look like, what it's not supposed to look like. As an added bonus, there's a create a meme activity that's embedded in it as well. So I found that a really great way to help students process and reprocess the procedures for class. All right. Speaking of procedures in class, Google Classroom, I think a lot of us became very familiar with it last year, either because we wanted to or because we had to or both, right? And now I know that there's been directives where we must keep an up-to-date Google Classroom for kids who have to go on quarantine, right? And so keeping it organized is a great way to help students stay organized themselves and stay up to date, right? And so one quick tip here is using emojis for each week or for each type of assignment, or for, anyway, so we'll go more into that. Shameless plug time. In a couple of weeks, Ben Jefferson and I are going to be doing a series of 2 different PDs in person at the PCC on essentially Google Classroom in the Delta era, during the Delta variant, like, when kids can at any moment be gone for 10 days at a time. And so we'll have one for beginners. If this, if you're not really familiar and you aren't comfortable with using Google Classroom even in person, that'll be on the 16th, and then on the 23rd, we'll take a little deeper dive into some of the cool features that you can leverage in Google Classroom. And then, so this slide I had developed to use to start class during distance learning. So as students log in, this is what they see. And it was like sort of like my version of taking painter's tape on the whiteboard, right? And, having a place for everything. The benefit of doing that is students will always know where to look for the agenda, because what's the question they always ask at the beginning of class? What are we going to do today, right? And so there it is. It's always there in the same place. So you don't have to necessarily answer it. You can, with a smile, point to, what we're doing today. And then the objective there. So if you're giving them a success criteria, it's there. There's an embedded timer in there, and that's just a YouTube video, so you can change it to like 6 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever your heart desires there. That's embedded. And then in red, I liked, that it sticks out to you, unless you're colorblind, but it sticks out to you. That's where you do your thing, right? And so a few of the classrooms I've been into this year, they're still using it. And, I was like, why are you using it? And the one thing they liked about it was using this as a warm-up, a daily warm-up. And so it gets posted on Google Classroom. Every kid gets a copy. You can play yours or project yours with the timer, so they know, that it's counting down, but they have an expected place to write their warm-up, right? Or to work out the warm-up problem or something. So anyway, so that's just all it is. It's a Google slide with boxes, but it was super effective. And so, and it seems to continue to be. So that template's there for you. All right, next thing, we're going to speed through the rest of these, but like I said, you have all the links available to you. This idea of cloning yourself. Sometimes, don't you wish you could just clone yourself so that you could be handling a small group of students who need special attention or one-on-one attention, while the more self-directed learners can, you can just give them a little bit of a push instead of lots of attention. Well, there's a solution for that. And so we talked about blended and hybrid learning last year. That wasn't hybrid learning or blended learning. That has been around for a while. And this Edutopia video, again, for the sake of time, we won't go into it, but it sort of explains this concept of recording your lesson so that, or the instructional part of your lesson, recording that, and then having some students do that recording while you work with other students, in one-on-one or one-on-three, perhaps, right? So this idea of stations, right? And so that walks you through it. One of the complaints, and my own complaint when I've attempted to do this is, well, what do I do if the students don't watch the video? Like, what if they don't watch it for homework? And that I'm counting on them to watch it so that we could do the other, the flipped classroom thing. And so Jennifer Gonzalez, who runs this podcast, if you're into podcasts, that's a really great one, The Cult of Pedagogy. Anyway, she put together this data where why students weren't watching my videos, and it's because they were way too long, right? And so they're more likely to watch a video that is under 9 minutes long, right? And so that's the thing. So you have to try to condense your videos to something that short. 3 to 6 minutes is like the goal. Students are more likely to watch the entire video that way. And then the pie chart kind of shows you how much time you should spend on it. And one of my hangups on like recording videos before the past year, because now I don't care. I'm just like on YouTube all the time posting silly things, or useful things, I think. But I was really hung up on the editing and like, oh, I said a little too many times here. Let me try it again. Really, it's not that important. If you can cut some things out, great. But really, only about 10% of your time is what the experts recommend you spend on the enhancement of videos. So anyway, there's that, and you can click on it. If this is something you're interested in, she goes into this much more deeply, and you have the links for that. Oh, well, I'll share that with you later. So inclusivity is something else that has been in the forefront lately, and why hasn't it always been, right? And so let's keep it there, right? And so here's a couple of resources for that. So when I think back of how of students who thrived during distance learning, this is one thing that works. I think I would miss, right? And it's there's some students who don't have a voice, like in crowds, were able to find their voice through the chat, right? The quiet students who maybe don't want to speak out found it very easy to speak in the chat. And then I was thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was a chat feature for in real life, where you're in IRL with students and you tell them, hey, go ahead and tell me in the chat what you think. Well, there is. What? Yeah, so this thing, Backchannel chat, it's completely free. They have like paid tiers, but there's no real great feature with the pay versions. But anyway, this video will show you how to use it. But essentially, it's like Kahoot, where you give students a URL and they go to that URL, and then they have access to this essentially a chat room with you about class, and you can turn it off when you're done. And see, if you care, if you click on that, it'll take you to my YouTube channel. So there you go. All right. So then there's this other little known feature in Google Slides that it has a built-in chat in it. So it's like 7 years old, but nobody ever uses it because we never think about it. So let me just show you what this looks like. When you're presenting, you get let's see, let me share this. So when you go to present a Google slide, you get this extra window that pops up, and often we just close it, right? It's the presenter view. You can see your presenter notes here, and you can go to the back and forward over here, and your notes go here. But then there's this thing called audience tools. So you can click on audience tools, and let's see, I'll start a new one. All right. And just like that, on the presentation, there's this banner with a unique URL. So you can open up a second slide, or a second tab, type in that URL, and interact with me in real time and with each other. And then I can project those. So in real life, that's there for you. I'll just leave that on, no pressure to use that, but if you want, you can open up a new tab and add some questions, and we'll look at them at the end. So I'll just leave them there. Patricia, ever a raised hand. Do you have a question? All right, not hearing anything, but feel free to just unmute and interrupt me if you do have a question. When we think about inclusivity, the strategy is UDL, Universal Design for Learning, right? And this could be an entire PD all on its own, and it is. And I linked it there. And so the program specialists at the district office put this together. You can, if you'd like to experience it one more time in person, you feel free to email them and they would be happy to run this again. But the resources for that are there for you, all right? So I could fake it and just pretend it was mine, but I'll just redirect you there, all right? We're just gonna go through to the end because we got just a little bit, and then I'll give you some time at the end, I hope, to play with some of these things. So the last thing is reassessing assessments, right? So if we learned nothing else, it was like, how do we reassess students? How do we use assessments for learning? How can we be creative about these things with students when they're not really engaging? We don't know if they're smiling and laughing at us, you know, or if they're even paying attention. Are they watching TV, you know? We had to get creative, and I think some of those creative things can bleed into our in-person situation right now. All right. One of the best things that came out of this, I think, is this idea of teachbacks and summaries. So a teachback, here's one example, and this was the teachback study guide. A lot of the teachers I work with ended up using this as a first semester final in 2020. And essentially it was a study guide, traditional study guide with a list of terms that you're supposed to know. And they gave that to students, and then said, okay, open book, open internet, open notes, open anything. Here's the study guide. Show me that you can at least find the information about these things. And so it would give them like 20 minutes to go and fill in the study guide. If you assign it through Google Classroom, you can, and make a copy for each student, you can kind of see in real time and redirect students who are maybe a little bit off, right? After the 20 minutes, they said, okay, now this is part 2 of this, of the test. You're gonna go on to Flipgrid. They would give them a Flipgrid link. And you have to record a 45-second explanation of what you think are the top 3 terms. So, and tell me everything that you think I want you to know about the 3 most important terms on this sheet. And then what that did is it made students critically think about, well, what does Mr. Rivas think should be important? And, you know, and then what do I think is important? You know, and 45 seconds is not a long time. You know, some generous folks did a minute. That's still not a lot of time to explain 3 very important concepts. And so what ended up happening was they had to do multiple takes. So what they were doing was repeating the most important information over and over again until they got it right. Essentially, you trick them into studying, right, and processing the information. And so this was super effective. I think, you know, I would always use this as a final moving forward. And then there's this idea of translation teachbacks, right? So here's the information. Okay, now take this information and explain it to a 5-year-old. That's 5-year-old me, by the way. Someone let me out of the house wearing that, and I can't believe it. But yeah, the concept there then is, if I can, you know, maybe dumb it down, then I actually really understand the concepts and the ideas, right? Because I had to explain it to someone, you know, who's younger than me, and so that was really effective. And this was really effective with elementary school students, and it you know, it sort of inspired some of the teachers I work with. It gave them this idea. I literally saw my then 5th grader doing this and thought, why don't we all do this, right? And the basic principle is the teacher gave the students, 5 things that I think you should know in a T chart. On one side, 5 things I should know, you as a student should know. On the other side, show me how you know this. However, whatever it takes, show me that you know this. Prove to me that you know this, right? And then they had to do the extra step of recording themselves explaining it. And so, so there's one in a math example, and then included a video there. I won't play it, but it's my daughter, super cute, explaining diffusion to her teacher in a Flipgrid. She didn't know I was recording her, so but it's it's super cute, so you can enjoy it as well. All right. Another creative way to assess students that was used here is this map test, not the NWEA. This came before it. The basic idea is just like the study guide, right? You give a list of words. In person, the way you could do this is have students write the words on little index cards, right? And then they have this set of cards of terms they're supposed to know. And then they're supposed to arrange them, maybe in groups, maybe on their own, in a way that makes sense, where they could explain it. So they arrange the cards however they think they should arrange them. And then they do a write-up explaining their arrangement. So you could have students do it in groups even, and the write-up will be completely different, right? But it, again, is having them process the information and then communicate it, right? So show what they know. And I gave you an example in there using a test on Midsummer Night's Dream, in case you're interested. Last thing here we'll look at is this concept of a single column rubric. And I teach an assessment class at Cal State Bakersfield, and in teaching that, I came across this and thought, like, it changed the way I write rubrics because it's just so easy. By the way, I always hated writing rubrics because it was so time consuming, but this idea is really useful. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And again, Jennifer Gonzalez has a whole episode on this, which I linked for you. But the idea is that you give students the proficiency criteria in the center. And then there's room to write concerns and showing a way to show that they have advanced somehow. So if you have the students who are like, I see you gave me an A, but where's the plus next to my A? That's where that explanation can go. And so, you can decide what goes down here in the grades, but the idea there is that the bare minimum thing that a student can turn in is proficient, right? It's like a checklist of proficiency. And so, so you don't take the time to write what's advanced and what, needs help. If a student turns something in and it's not quite proficient yet, you can explain why not right here. Or better yet, you can have the students grade each other, and this gives them a way to share why something is not quite proficient yet, right? So that one was super helpful for me. And then there's another version of it that you can take a look at too. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing here. So this concept of doing memes was big last year. A lot of teachers were using memes to show that you understand a concept. And when you really think about what memes do, they often involve wit and satire. Making fun of something in a witty way involves some critical thinking. And so that's, why don't we want students to be critically thinking? And so here, there's a video there that explains explains to you or to students how to create a meme on a Google slide. But then there's all kinds of meme generators. So how do you use that? Here's 2 examples. A vocabulary, which we all have premium versions of through Nearpod, has this news and rap, and then CNN has a more serious version. CNN 10, a 10-minute recap of news events, right? And so you could show one of those to students or have them watch it and then create a meme based on a news story that spoke to them, right? And then they can explain why. So, all right. But wait, there's more, right? A bunch of other things. This is sort of my pet project. We talked about like, you know, what we wanted to do. One of the things was baking. The other thing was just collecting strategies. So I put together this document. It's over 50 strategies that I've just, you know, as I learn about it, I try to put it in here, trying to give credit where credit is due. I didn't create hardly any of those, but I've found them and I'm trying to compile them in one place. And so they're there in that document for you to use and, you know, however you see fit. All right. So I want to thank you for coming, and I want to give you a survey, which is also how you will get paid.